Krishna. We are here again going to read from some transcendental literature. This one is called Renunciation Through Wisdom, and it is a book written by A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's transcendental knowledge that basically Srila Prabhupada wrote when he was a householder in India. So it's a very interesting perspective. As Prabhupada's going through his spiritual life, he was also a part of the Gaudia-Matha at the time, and he was also living in India. So he kind of relates the spiritual knowledge of India in this book to what's politically going on in India and the consciousness that people have at the time and all that sort of stuff. It's not so really in-depth politically everything, but you can see that the Srila Prabhupada, or the author, is relating the spiritual knowledge of India to what's kind of currently going on and what's going on in the world at that time, which was 1954, late 1950s, what was going on at the time, or maybe, actually, 1945. So, just after World War II. He's relating the spiritual teachings of India to what's going on politically. So at any rate, Renunciation Through Wisdom. Renunciation Through Wisdom. I've got 2 live streams going on at once. We're on YouTube, and we're also on Live Me through my phone. So, what's up, everybody? So, yeah, this is Spiritual Knowledge from India, and we're excited about reading this book. Hope it doesn't burst any bubbles. I'm going to read the introduction for all the devotees who are a little familiar with this kind of spiritual stuff, to give you some background about how the book came about, and then we'll get into the actual books, which is a bunch of essays written by the spiritual master. Of course, I remember you. Welcome. So, what we're reading today, we're not goofing off so much. Sorry, Live Me. I'll goof off tomorrow. So, introduction. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, has become well known for its large body of Vedic literature. Books on Bhakti-yoga that include Bhagavad-Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. These 3 works by the movement's founder and spiritual guide, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, are voluminous, commented English translations of Sanskrit and Bengali classics. Remarkably, Srila Prabhupada wrote these and many other smaller works in a span of 12 years, from 1966 to 1977, practically impossible, while traveling widely and overseeing the growth of the Krishna consciousness movement. What many people may not know, however, is that during the years before he came to the West, Srila Prabhupada wrote extensively on Krishna consciousness in his native language, Bengali. In 1976, as soon as I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I discovered some of Srila Prabhupada's early Bengali writings. They were serialized essays that had appeared in a monthly magazine he called Gaudia-Matha. One of these lengthy essays, entitled Bhagavaner Katha, Knowledge of the Supreme, ran in the Gaudia Patrika in 1948 and 1949. So there's the years that these essays were written as. Again, we're reading spiritual knowledge from Indian spiritual knowledge. It's a little background of this book right now. One of these, in 1949, soon after India won its independence, I decided that it would make a wonderful booklet for Srila Prabhupada's growing number of followers in his native Bengal. When I presented Srila Prabhupada that newly printed book in early 1977 in Calcutta, he was extremely pleased. He looked at me with his face shining brightly, and with a broad smile he said, thank you very much. Please keep printing my books." I was so encouraged that I soon collected as many of Srila Prabhupada's Bengali writings from the Gaudia patrika as I could, and printed them as a booklet under the titles, quote, Bhakti-Kata, the science of devotion, Jnana-Kata, topics of spiritual science, Muni-Ganera Mati Brahma, the deluded thinkers, and Buddhi-yoga, the highest use of intelligence. Finally, I compiled all the booklets into a hardbound book called Vairagya-Vidya, which has now been translated into English, entitled Renunciation Through Wisdom. This book right here. Bam! My close friends and god brother Sarvabhavana Das did the translation, and he has done a very good job. In each of the original Bengali essays, Srila Prabhupada's profound spiritual wisdom shines through, and Sarvabhavana Prabhu has expertly conveyed this wisdom in his translation. When Srila Prabhupada wrote these essays, he was a family man playing the part of an insignificant devotee in the Gaudia-Matha, the Krishna Consciousness Society founded by his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. Yet, despite the humble position Srila Prabhupada was taking at the time, his writings marked him unmistakably as a pure devotee. Anyone with an open mind and a gracious heart will see from his writings that Srila Prabhupada was a self-realized soul all along. Pretty far out. Like his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada strictly followed the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his presentation of Krishna consciousness. Those teachings are summarized in the phrase Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti-yoga, which means renunciation through the wisdom that comes from practicing devotional service. This line from the famous verse by Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, one of Lord Chaitanya's intimate disciples, has inspired the title of the present book, Renunciation Through Wisdom. What is this wisdom which produces renunciation? It is one of the fruits of devotional service to Krishna. When one experiences the nectar of devotional service and becomes steeped in the knowledge of Vedic literature, one naturally becomes averse to sense gratification and attains freedom from material bondage. Lord Krishna spoke the essence of Vedic wisdom in the Bhagavad-Gita as the Gita Mahatmya, quote, the glory of the Bhagavad-Gita, says in this poetic analogy. The cowherd boy Krishna milked the cow of the Upanishads, the philosophical essence of the Vedas, for the sake of the calf Arjuna, and the milk that came forth is the Bhagavad-Gita. Saintly persons seriously concerned about their spiritual welfare will drink and relish that wondrous nectarine milk. In Renunciation Through Wisdom, Srila Prabhupada has simplified the teachings of the Bhagavad-Gita for our understanding. If we drink this nectar, very soon the brilliant shine of transcendental knowledge will dispel the darkness of ignorance caused by our unwanted material desires, and then love for Krishna will dawn in our hearts. The transcendental knowledge is eternal. It never becomes dated or outmoded, but is always relevant in all times and places. Therefore, Renunciation Through Wisdom, though written 40 or more years ago, more than that now, in the context of modern Indian history, can enlighten anyone in any part of the world. Actually, this wisdom is for everyone, for all time. Bhakti Charu Swami, New York, July 1991. So this is a simplified, helps you simplify the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita, distills them, and makes it easy to understand. So if you're thinking maybe you don't know Bhagavad-Gita, then you can go over to my YouTube channel, Sadhu-sanga Das, and we did a reading of the Bhagavad-Gita. We just read straight through it. You hear that, and then you want to hear this. You'll want to simplify and get to know what Krishna is really saying. So, spiritual knowledge from India. So let's do the first chapter. This material nature is full of miseries. This is the first essay, and it's called Bhagavan Kata, knowledge of the Supreme. So it starts off. This material nature is full of miseries. The editor of the daily Amrita Bazar Patrika, published from Allahabad, began the editorial the other day on a rather sad note. The nation's week began with memories of Jallianwala Bagh, this is there's a note here. On April 13th, 1919, 1,516 people were killed or wounded at Jallianwala Bagh, India, by the British Army. This unprovoked attack on a prayer meeting caused outrage and was considered the turning point in Anglo-Indian relations. Indian leaders, including Gandhi, finally realized that the British would not easily give up their dominance of the country. So it's a pretty serious thing he's quoting here. I'll just start over. The nation's week began with memories of Jallianwala Bagh, and political serfdom no longer troubles us. But our troubles are far from being at an end. In the dispensation of providence, mankind cannot have any rest. If one kind of trouble goes, another quickly follows. India, politically free, is faced with difficulties that are no less serious than the troubles under foreign rule. So, Srila Prabhupada continues. Now, if one consults the accounts ledger of Indians' serfdom and freedom, the contents from a spiritual challenging reading. Try again. And views the contents from a spiritual perspective, the conclusion will be as follows. The 4 yugas or ages, namely Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali, add up to 4,320,000 years. Kali Yuga, which lasts 432,000 years, began from the time of Maharaj Parikshit's rule, some 5,000 years ago. For approximately 1,000 of these 5,000 years, i.e. since the invasion of the Muhammad Ghori in AD 1050, India has been experiencing foreign rule. In other words, when we calculate according to Scripture, India has exercised absolute sovereignty over the entire planet Earth for a period of 3,888,000 years to Maharaj Parikshit's rule. Hence, the meager thousand years of foreign subjugation are not such a lamentable thing. Neither in the past nor at present has India's political serfdom or freedom been the prime concern of India's greatest thinkers and philosophers. Okay, I'm going to just move this over a little bit. I got 2 cameras, so I'm trying to figure out how to navigate each one. One's way up here, one's way down below. Maybe I'll put them together next time. At any rate, so India's freedom has not been the concern of India's greatest thinkers and philosophers, who well knew the actual value of such things. The kings of India up to Maharaj Parikshit were able to rule the entire world, and not for a mere couple of centuries, but for thousands and thousands of years. The reason for their rule was not a political one. India's wise men of yore easily realized that the threefold miseries we humans are condemned to suffer can never be mitigated by the political condition controlling the country, whether foreign rule or freedom from it. At the dawn of modern history, the Armageddon fought in India over political question lasted only 18 days. On that historic battlefield, the problem of human suffering and its permanent solution was discussed, and this discussion was compiled in the form of Bhagavad-Gita. Thus, millennia ago, the Bhagavad-Gita comprehensively discussed the same topic the editor of Amrita Bazar Patrika writes about in a despondent mood. Quote, if one kind of trouble goes, another quickly follows. In the Gita 7.14, Lord Krishna says, this divine energy of mine, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. Unquote. The Sanskrit words Daivi Mayi used here can be translated in modern terms as nature's law. This nature's law is so stringent that it is impossible to overcome it. In spite of our prolific articles in the newspapers or our big conferences, tabling motions that run into volumes, our advanced technological and scientific efforts aimed at protecting us from the clutches of nature's law are futile because they are all controlled by the very same nature's law, or Daivi Mayi. Therefore, trying to utilize mundane science to overpower nature's law is like creating a Frankenstein. Efforts to extirpate human suffering through advanced technology and bring about lasting happiness have brought us to the atomic age. Western thinkers have become gravely concerned about the extent of destruction an atomic explosion can cause. Some leaders are trying to calm the alarm with platitudes about how atomic energy is to be used solely for peaceful purposes, but this is another form of deception caused by Devi Mai, or nature's law. It is impossible for anyone to surmount the two-pronged attack of Devi Mai, that is, her covering potency and her throwing potency. The more we try to conquer this divine energy, the more powerfully we are defeated by her exciting us through the mode of passion. The more we try to conquer this divine energy, the more powerful we are defeated by her exciting us through the mode of passion and punishing us with the threefold miseries, culminating in all-devouring death. This struggle between the divine energy and the evil forces is eternal. Our inability to understand this struggle has led us to lament, quote, "In the dispensation of providence, mankind cannot have any rest," unquote. He's quoting that previous article. Despite repeatedly tasting defeat at the hands of the divine energy, the evil forces cannot understand why, quote, "mankind cannot have any rest." Yet in the Bhagavad-Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains this. At first, he sternly warns the evil forces with these words, Daivi hyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Quote, "This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome." And then in the next line, he tells them how to overcome this divine nature. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So that's the end of the section. This material nature is full of miseries. Next section, the cause of suffering. Mahishasura, the utmost powerful demon, who was the personification of the forces of evil, was in fact endowed with intelligence, education, wealth, the ability to perform severe penances and attract large followings, and so on. His present-day followers, possessing identical qualifications, are no less enterprising and expert in exploiting the divine energy. They carry out elaborate scientific research, misspending huge amounts of money, time, energy, intelligence, men, and so on. But instead of peace and joy, what they discover through these researches ends up producing untold misery for humanity. This is a perfect example of Devi Maya's throwing agency in action. All these evil activities bring great losses to human society. As a result of this evil, the mundane scientists incur grievous sin, which destroys their real intelligence. And this loss of intelligence turns them away from God and robs them of their chance to surrender to Him. Thus in Bhagavad-Gita 7.15, the Supreme Lord says, Namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradamaha mayaya paritagyana asuram bhavamashritam. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, who partake in the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. In the Bhagavad-Gita 16:7-20, the Supreme Lord has exhaustively described the nature of such atheistic demons. Those who are demoniac, quote, do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. They say that this world is unreal, with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no other cause than lust. Following such conclusions, the demoniac, who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence, engage in unbefitting, horrible works meant to destroy the world, making the atomic bomb. Taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds and thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. The demoniac person thinks, quote, "So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more and more by my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. Here is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice." In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Thus, perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes proudly perform sacrifice in name only, without following any rules and regulations. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheming against the real religion. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Hey, thanks. Woo. Everybody follow T44. Zad. Sorry. This verse from the Gita... Okay, so that's the end of that verse. Unquote. This verse from the Gita aptly describes the demoniac nature. There have always existed two types of men, the devotee and the demon. Long ago, there lived a big demon named Ravana, who disguised himself as a sannyasi, a renounced mendicant, and he tried to steal the wife of the Supreme Lord, Ramachandra. She was the goddess of fortune, Sita Devi. In this way, the demon brought about his own destruction. But now, in modern times, Ravana's dynasty has multiplied into millions. This has given rise to many different opinions, which have made the demons inimical towards one another. Thus they are all competing tooth and nail, trying to kidnap the goddess of fortune, money, Sita Devi. Each one is thinking, "I am the most cunning, and so I will enjoy Sita Devi all by myself." Unquote. But like Ravana, all these demons, along with their entire families, are being destroyed. So many powerful leaders, like Hitler, have come, but enamored by the illusion of enjoying and exploiting the Supreme Lord's energy and consort, Sita Devi, the goddess of fortune, all of them have been thwarted and crushed in the past, are being thwarted and crushed in the present, and will be thwarted and crushed in the future. The root cause of the aforementioned lament, quote, "in the dispensation of providence mankind cannot have any rest," unquote, is the demoniac mentality of exploiting and enjoying the Lord's divine energy. The demons who do not know when or where to renounce, nor do they know when or where to accept or to receive. When diagnosing a patient, one has to properly judge this accepting and rejecting principle. So in order to cure the demoniac mentality in human society, which causes the Ravan syndrome of trying to steal Sita Devi, it is essential that the demoniac nature be transformed. For any treatment, two important factors are that the patient be in clean surroundings, and that his medicine and food be administered punctually. Similarly, to transfer the demoniac mentality, people have to be clean, disciplined, and truthful. This end is not served by advocating the theory of yata mat tatapat, that, quote, "there are as many ways to salvation as there are opinions," unquote. For in this way, one confuses and deceives the populace. By bringing the clean and the unclean, the disciplined and the undisciplined, the truthful and the untruthful on the same level, one will find it impossible to cure or even treat any patient. So, next section, the godless demons. The grossly materialistic demons are so completely bereft of spiritual knowledge that although at every moment they perceive the transience of the material body, all their activities center on the body. They are unable to understand that the soul within the body is the permanent and essential substance, and that the body is mutable and temporary. Becoming first enamored of and then deluded by Vivartatvada, the theory of evolution, they conclude that the entire cosmic body also lacks a soul. Yeah, that's such a good point. Since the fallacious theory they apply to their own physical existence leads them to reject any research into the existence of the soul residing within the body, they fail to perceive the presence of the supersoul within the gigantic body of the cosmic manifestation. They falsely conclude that the body is everlasting, that there is nothing beyond it. Similarly, they think that the material creation, which is the universal body, is factually governed only by the laws of nature. Any discussion on this subject is invariably put to premature death by their insistence that nature is the be-all and the end-all. The more intelligent among them carry this discussion a little further and postulate that impersonalism is the quintessence of everything. But far beyond this realm of manifest and unmanifest material nature is the transcendental and eternal state. The atheists, however, are characteristically unable to believe in this existence. In this way, with their perverted minds bereft of far-sightedness, demoniac men perform activities that bring only misery to the people. And as a result of many such unwanted activities, the atom bomb was discovered. Whew. The endless plans these demoniac men chalk out can never bode well for humanity. In the past, Ravana attempted to build a stairway to heaven, claiming this was for humanity's benefit. Actually, he was trying to cheat the Supreme Lord, Ramachandra. But he was unsuccessful. History repeats itself, for now we find that Ravana's descendants are attempting to cheat the Lord in the name of planning to benefit society. The thing to take note of is that no demon will complement other demons' plans. Every demon will declare that since his plan is the most wonderful, all others must vote for him. Then an opponent will say that in actuality his plan is the best, and hence he should rightfully be given all the votes. In this age of votes, the fighting over who is to actually get the votes has untimely broken all the stairways to heaven. If one calmly considers the facts, one will easily conclude that all these plans manufactured by the perverted brains of the demons, with their myopic vision, will never bring peace to the world. Of course, in one matter all the demons readily agree, and that is to surreptitiously enjoy Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of the Supreme Lord, without the knowledge of the Lord himself. Every demon is vainly proud, thinking no one is more intelligent and esteemed than himself. Therefore, the overpowering desires that urge him on to perform various activities are, according to him, ultimately beneficial for human society. In the end, of course, it is inevitably revealed that all his aspirations were illusory and unrealistic, and only meant for himself. Yet despite this revelation, the demons continue to influence the populace through manipulations and lies. There are no limits to the imagination of these unclean and deluded demons. They pose as self-styled leaders and endlessly worry about the welfare of society. They worry, for example, about where to lodge the people who come to purchase in the marketplace. What they will actually think about is how to make foolproof arrangements to secure their own long-lasting enjoyment, along with their children's, their grandchildren's, and their great-grandchildren's enjoyment, up to the final dissolution of the world. But when they experience suffering instead of pleasure, the demons revert to violence against their fellow men to accumulate wealth. The material desires are insatiable, and so even billions of dollars cannot appease them. Whoever is expert in illegally amassing huge fortunes becomes the top dog. The demons are full of hate, greed, anger, lust, and so on, and they are tireless in their efforts to illicitly amass great wealth merely to gratify their sensual urges. On the other hand, their competitors are no less expert in cheating them of their black wealth. How can such ruthless competition aimed at stealing one another's illegally earned money bring about peace and prosperity? Hence the demons can never help the person who laments, quote, "In the dispensation of providence, man cannot have any rest," unquote. So, continuing, the demon is always ruminating on how to increase his bank balance. Quote, "Today the stocks have gone up, so also have my profits. Tomorrow, if these other commodities become dearer, my bank balance will further increase. And so my future looks bright and prosperous." Unquote. The demon continues to think, but now the demon continues to think, but now on a slightly different subject. Quote, "One of my enemies has already been destroyed, and another one is soon to meet his end. This puts me in a more secure position. So now that I have become adept at eliminating my enemies, I am God Almighty. Why must you look in search of God? Hundreds of gods are floating right before your eyes." Unquote. Such thoughts and actions make the demons more and more atheistic, unless they refuse to hear the transcendental message of God. They proudly declare, quote, "Who is God? Why, I am God. When I can illegally manipulate funds and become so wealthy that I can enjoy everything in this world, then I am indeed Almighty God. I am strong and happy and accomplished. Those who are weaklings, without money and means, must respect me as God. What is the use of crying after any other god?" Unquote. The demons are under the impression that no one is more wealthy and popular than themselves. They think that their wealth will somehow be protected by some spirit, and that in this way they are deluded. Their final destination is hell. Woo! The few religious deeds that the demons perform are merely a show. They are meant only to flatter their false ego and bring them more recognition and respect. They perform them only for their own sense enjoyment and are invariably acts of violence. The demons engage in these rituals without following the scriptural injunctions, merely to appease their vain glory. Strutting with false pride, strength, anger, lust, and so on, the demons become totally absorbed in bodily consciousness, thinking, "This is my body. I am Indian, Bengali, and so on. He is a Muslim, he is a Hindu, he is a German." Unquote. In this way, they perpetrate acts of violence on others. The Supreme Lord repeatedly puts these most abominable, wretched sinners into the most distressful conditions, constantly pushing them with his stringent laws of nature, or Daivi Mai. Thus, taking repeated births as demons, these reprobates can never appreciate the transcendental pastimes, names, beauty, and so on of the Supreme Lord. Gradually cultivating the impersonal knowledge of the Absolute, they are destined to suffer the worst possible life. So, let's see here. The cause, that's the end of that section, the cause of the demoniac mentality. Next part. There are numerous causes of the demoniac mentality, but in this essay we shall delve into only three: lust, anger, and greed. In the Bhagavad-Gita 16:21, Lord Krishna describes these three characteristics as destroyers of the self, portals leading to hell. Again, for people tuning in, this is reading some spiritual knowledge from India, Indian transcendental knowledge. Check it out. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the sole proprietor and enjoyer of everything. When the living entity forgets this fact, they develop an intense desire to enjoy this phenomenal world. But they cannot be fully satisfied by such endeavors, and thus anger develops. Anger causes frustration, as in the story of the unsuccessful fox and the sour grapes. I don't know that story. The living entity is then forced to pretend to be a renouncer. At the bottom of such renunciation burns the great flame of greed and the desire for enjoyment. This is only another stage of material desire. Therefore, unless one transcends this stage of acceptance and rejection of physical pleasures and becomes situated on the platform of the eternal self, one cannot understand the sublime message of the Lord. And without this understanding, one will continue to cultivate the demoniac mentality. The only method by which one can elevate oneself from the depths of demoniac depravity into the path of self-realization is to learn the injunctions of the scriptures and to act accordingly. Chaotic and undisciplined activities contrary to spiritual injunctions are actions performed out of lust. It is not possible to eradicate anger and greed through such acts of lust, nor is it possible to experience true happiness and divine elevation. Therefore, if we wish to find the path of spiritual upliftment and eternal peace, the need for which is expressed in the lament, quote, in the dispensation of providence mankind cannot have any rest, revealed scriptures are the only guide. Simply by executing the injunctions of the scriptures, we can become free from acts of lust and chaotic living. At present, we are living in the thick of Kali Yuga. Little footnote here, Kali Yuga, the present historical age, fourth and last in a perpetually repeating cycle of four progressively degenerate ages. So, Kali Yuga. The people of this age are mostly short-lived, misguided, unfortunate, and always tormented by disease and distress. Therefore, it is not easy for them to appreciate the words of the scriptures. The followers of the world's various religions, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and so on, are transgressing the scriptural injunctions of their own faiths to varying degrees and living as they like. Many people, far from following scriptural injunctions, ridicule the sacred texts and thus gradually slide down to a demoniac life of unrestricted sense enjoyment. The Supreme Lord and his devotees are very much concerned about the deliverance of these conditioned souls afflicted by the ill influence of Kali Yuga. The devotees, or Vaishnavas, are the most compassionate saintly souls, and thus they ardently desire to deliver the fallen living entities. The Supreme Lord always responds to the desires of the Vaishnavas, and so he answers their prayers for the salvation of these suffering souls of Kali Yuga. Seeing the most miserable condition of the living entities in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya, the Savior of the fallen souls, has expounded a method for their salvation. This method is taken from the scriptures and is applicable to everyone. In previous ages, one could study the Vedas and purify oneself by living according to those instructions, but it is impossible for the present population to properly execute these Vedic injunctions, which include strictly following vows of celibacy. One who is extremely degraded and sinful cannot find the accurate path to realization by studying the Vedas. It is a waste of time even to explain the meaning of the Vedas to such persons who are devoid of a proper upbringing and discipline. Lord Chaitanya has indeed showered his mercy upon these Kali Yuga people. So there is no doubt that those who are unable even to receive this mercy from Lord Chaitanya are forever bereft of saving grace. As for those who are fortunate souls, after realizing the greatness of Lord Chaitanya's mercy, have accepted it, they have escaped the punishments of Maya, or the dispensation of providence. But for those who have agreed to come under the influence of the cycle of karmic reactions, are being pummeled by Maya, the Supreme Lord has arranged the process of karma yoga, or fruit of activities, with the aim of sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. So, let me read that again. But for those who have agreed to come under the influence of the cycle of karmic reactions and are being pummeled about by Maya, the Supreme Lord has arranged the process of karma yoga, or fruit of activities, with the aim of sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. Okay. The learned sages say that the living entities go through 8,400,000 species of life. There are 900,000 aquatic species, 2 million plant species, mountains and other non-moving species, 1,100,000 insects and worm species, 1 million bird species, and 3 million animal species, and 400,000 human species. After passing through all these species, the soul is finally born as a human being in Bharatvarsha, India. He achieves this birth by gradually awakening his consciousness. Many millions of years flash by as the soul goes through each of the above-mentioned species of life. So even after all this, if the soul, despite being born as a human being in India, continues to be subjugated by Maya and goes round in the whirlpool of the dispensation of providence, then there is no limit to his misfortune. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj has therefore written, Bharata Bhumi Haila Manusha Janma Yar Janma Sarthaka Kari Kara Para Upakara. Quote, one who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharatavarsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. Human beings can perfect their lives by following in the footsteps of those great sages of India, who have all along showed the proper path. The reason for this is simple. Nowhere else can we find an example of the manner in which the sages of India have endeavored to find absolute cessation of Maya's attack and to become an eternal dust particle of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. In other countries, especially in the Occident, tremendous progress has been made. Tremendous progress has been made in the various fields of material science, but it is all based on the material mind and body, which are creations of Maya, the illusory energy. It is for this reason that the Westerners lament, quote, "In the dispensation of providence, man cannot have any rest." Unquote. At present, the Indians have similarly taken to the path of self-destruction by aping the Western ways. Aping. They have discarded They have discarded and desecrated their own culture and have become beggars at another's door. They are now flying their flag of independence, but this is also a dispensation of Maya. Factually, they cannot gain anything from it. The Occident has never delved into the three stages in the development of the eternal relationship between the infinitesimal soul and the infinite supreme soul. These stages are, first, the initial contact with the Supreme Lord, and the awakening of one's relationship with Him. Second, the execution of the means to achieve one's eternal relationship with Him. And finally, the blossoming of that relationship into one of love and total dependence of the soul upon the Lord. India's special gift. Although Western people have brilliantly developed in mundane matters, they are tossed about in the sea of despair and litlessness. Similarly, the Indians, although trying to feel grateful for their mundane development, are experiencing the same litlessness and dissatisfaction. Strangely enough, now the Western thinkers are looking towards India to find peace. To find peace and calm. We can safely harbor the firm conviction that soon the message of peace will reach their ears. And it did when he came to the West some 20 years later. The author of the book. Continue here. The formula for peace. See here, I'll read another 15 minutes. See if I can get through this last section. Okay, the formula for peace. Here we go. Spiritual knowledge from India. Lord Krishna, seeing the distressful condition of the living entities and foreseeing their bleak future, spoke the scripture known as Bhagavad-Gita, which contains unequivocal instructions for mankind. These instructions are like the cooling showers of peace on the blazing forest fire of material existence. Ordinary human activities are quite different from the activities recommended in the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Understanding this difference is essential for us. In our times, we find many fruitive workers who claim to be karma yogis, but in fact are seen to enjoy the fruits of their labor. What is needed is not this false karma yoga, but genuine Bhakti-yoga, which Lord Krishna several times explains in Bhagavad-Gita. Bhakti-yoga means devotion to the Supreme Lord. Quote, unquote. The Lord says in the Gita 10:10, quote, "To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me." Unquote. Elsewhere in the Gita 18:56, the Lord says, quote, "One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service." Unquote. Therefore, since Bhakti-yoga is the means to attain the Supreme Lord, then Bhakti-yoga is nothing other than devotional service. The Supreme Lord is attained through loving devotional service. This fact is well known. Hence, the Lord is known as Bhakta-vatsala, quote, he who is especially inclined towards his devotees." Unquote. The course of action one chooses through executing Bhakti-yoga is the very means for mankind to attain lasting peace. Such a course of action will enable a man to find rest. Such a course of action will enable men to find rest in the dispensation of providence. We can clearly understand the essence of Bhakti-yoga from the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 2, text 39 and text 40. Quote, "Thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without furtive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. The attainment of peace through the process of Sankhya Yoga is for the modern man is almost impossible. But peace is easily available through the process of Buddha-yoga, or loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And this peace is of the highest nature. It far exceeds the happiness experienced through any other process. Activities that are directly connected to devotional service blossom and develop unhindered by anything external. The amount of devotional activity one performs always remains intact. It is a permanent spiritual gain for the performer, never to be rendered futile. Even a little execution of devotional service is enough to save one from the greatest type of fear. The process of pure devotional service is one. At the same time, the Gita points out how to execute Buddha-yoga through jnana, or analytical study, and karma, or fruit of action. When Buddha-yoga is executed in conjunction with fruit of activity, it is known as karma-yoga. Similarly, when it is executed in conjunction with analytical study, then it is called jnana-yoga. And when Buddha-yoga, or devotional service, transcends both karma-yoga and jnana-yoga and becomes completely unalloyed, that devotion is called pure Bhakti-yoga, or loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. The fruit of activities one performs in this world, whether according to social norms or Vedic standards, gives different results. Again, by experiencing the fruit of those labors, one creates new sets of activities and their concomitant results, which in turn give rise to newer sets of activities and their results. All these activities and their results cannot automatically be labeled karma yoga. We can see that the process of performing fruitive actions and experiencing their results is like a mammoth tree sprouting endless branches and twigs. Can the performer of actions who experiences the endless fruits of that mammoth tree ever enjoy peace and benediction? No. Therefore it is said, quote, "In the dispensation of providence mankind cannot have any rest." Unquote. Even in this lifetime, one who performs fruitive work is totally entangled in the cycle of karma as he sits on the tree of material existence. As a result, the soul must enter the 8,400,000 species and suffer the threefold miseries, never finding any peace or rest. Yet people find it impossible to renounce fruitive activities. Even the so-called sannyasis who make a show of renouncing such activities must still perform many activities, at least to relieve their hunger. Sripad Shankaracharya, seeing the condition of the sannyasis during his time, commented, quote, "One takes on many different garbs just to fill one's stomach." Unquote. And trying to give up all activities is no solution. When Sri Arjuna, a warrior, wanted to forsake his duty of fighting a war, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, advised him, quote, "Perform your prescribed duties, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work." Unquote. Bhagavad-Gita 3:8. A person should never give up his prescribed duty without scriptural authorization, for this will cause chaos in the world. Since it is impossible to maintain the body without activities, it is impossible to totally renounce activities. On the other hand, the tree of material entanglements, which thrives on fruitive activities and their results, can never bring forth any hope for peace. It is for this reason that the Supreme Lord has explained how one is to perform activities. Here it comes. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in this way you will always remain free from bondage. Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 3, text number 9. It is another kind of dispensation of providence when the fruits of action do not bind one. To perform all activities only as a sacrifice for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu is true freedom from the results of activities, or the real art of karma yoga. Through this process of karma yoga, one is freed from the shackles of fruitive results, and one's inherent eternal loving devotion for the Supreme Lord gradually manifests. This type of karma yoga is also referred to as desireless actions, or naishkarmya. Or in other words, or in other words, activities performed without expectation of any sense gratification. One who works in this way offers all the results of his actions to the Supreme Lord instead of enjoying them himself. All of us must try to earn whatever money is required to maintain ourselves and our family. Money buys food, and food maintains our body. Without sufficient food, the body becomes weak and useless, and then it cannot generate further means for its sustenance. Which is the cause and which is the effect is very difficult to establish. Such is the cycle of fruitive activities. Our material existence, birth after birth, consists of going round the great cycle of fruitive activities. If, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, or as pure representative, a fortunate soul caught in the midst of this turning wheel can understand his distressful condition, he begins to perform activities that will free him from his bondage. Okay, one more section because it's short and we're coming up on the hour mark. I try to read for an hour, so we'll read a little bit more. So next one is life's only goal. So our objective is not the temporary peace and happiness available in this material world. As living entities, we are eternal, and hence the desire for permanent happiness should be our prime motive. Yet we souls change millions of bodies, going up and down the 14 material planetary systems, chasing after illusory peace and pleasures, expending huge amounts of blood and energy. The permanent peace and happiness we demonically run after eludes us constantly. We do not know where real peace and happiness are available. As Prahlad Maharaj says in the Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.25, quote, in this material world, every living entity desires some future happiness, which is exactly like a mirage in the desert. Where is water in the desert? Or, in other words, where is happiness in this material world? In search of truth, we become deviated, and taking shelter of the boat of the material body and mind, travel aimlessly in the ocean of material existence, with no land in sight. Mercilessly tossed about, we brood, quote, in the dispensation of providence, man cannot have any rest. If only we knew that our ultimate destination is Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we could end our suffering. To dispel our ignorance about this fact, Lord Krishna has informed us that we must perform all activities as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu's satisfaction. The Rig Veda confirms this. Quote, the Lord is the supreme shelter of everything, and all the demigods are constantly meditating on him, unquote. Thus we see that the demigods also consider Lord Vishnu's lotus feet their supreme destination, and they become liberated simply by performing all activities for his pleasure. One who wants release from the vicious karmic cycle, must have Lord Vishnu's lotus feet as his final objective. Otherwise, he will have to become demoniac. The followers of the Varnashram way of life, or Sanatan Dharma, are now being called Hindus. Their forefathers, especially those who belong to the upper castes, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, centered their life on Lord Vishnu. In every stage of life, especially in the householder stage, people worshipped Lord Vishnu in their homes, performing devotional service for his satisfaction. A few very devout souls continue to do so even today. They collect money only for the Lord's service. The money buys grains and vegetables, which they cook with devotion and then offer to Lord Vishnu. Later the devotees honor this prasadam, the Lord's mercy in the form of food, by eating it. In all these activities, Lord Vishnu is the enjoyer, and one seeks to please him. In the past, the times were conducive to such activities, and even now they are practicing in many places. Actually, such devotional service is applicable to everyone, to all places, and to all times. Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the goal of everything. Performing all works for his satisfaction is the only way to open up the path of liberation from the cycle of fruitive action, or karma. It is recommended that all progressive and beneficial activities be executed for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Echoing the words of the scriptures, the learned sages proclaim, quote, the attainment of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet is the same as becoming liberated, unquote. The final step in the Karma Yoga process is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, at which point one's own desires are automatically fulfilled. While delineating this point, Lord Krishna says that if work is not performed for his satisfaction, then all activities are tainted with sin and results in sinful reactions, which create havoc in society. In the Bhagavad-Gita 3:13, Lord Krishna says, quote, "The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is first offered for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin." Unquote. Preparing and eating food in the way just mentioned is service to the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord Vishnu. Sometimes it may appear that some sin is being committed in its execution, but if one takes and honors the remnants of the sacrifice or offering to Lord Vishnu, then one is automatically exonerated from all binding reactions and becomes liberated. Though we may live very carefully, trying to avoid sins, and strictly follow the path of nonviolence, still our lives are controlled by the cycle of karmic reactions. Hence, unwittingly, we are forced to commit many kinds of sin. We commit so many sins in business transactions, common human dealings, daily chores, and especially political and administrative activities. It is fine to vociferously support nonviolence, but in actual life one is compelled to commit sinful acts of violence. One may succeed in avoiding many kinds of sin, but it is impossible to escape committing the 5 great sins called Panchasuna. While walking on the street, we may crush many ants to death against our wishes. While cleaning the house, we may squash many insects to death. While grinding food grain or lighting a fire, we destroy many tiny lives. In this way, while executing our ordinary daily chores, we are forced to commit violence and take many innocent lives. Willingly or unwillingly, we commit sins. Thus, when a religion fabricated by the human brain prompts one to embrace the path of nonviolence for its own sake, it inevitably gives advantage to one and difficulty to another. It is impossible to be exempt from the adversities caused by mentally concocted beliefs. According to man-made laws, if one person murders another, he is condemned to the gallows, but no action is taken against a man for killing animals. Such is not the law of providence. The law of God is such that it punishes the killers of both man and animals. Both acts of murder are penalized. The atheists deny the existence of God because in this way they think they can commit sins unhindered. But all the revealed authorized scriptures say that by killing innocent creatures, the householders commit many sins unwillingly or willingly while performing their normal daily duties. To get release from these sins, the householders are enjoined to perform certain sacrifices. Foremost of these is to eat and honor the remnants of food offered to Lord Vishnu. As for those selfish householders who cook food only for their own sensual pleasure and not for the service of Lord Vishnu, they have to suffer all the sinful reactions incurred while cooking and eating. This is the law of providence. Therefore, to get rid of these sins, the followers of the Vedic religion dedicate their household activities to Lord Vishnu's service. The leaders of society are therefore advised to perform devotional service for Lord Vishnu's satisfaction, both for their own benefit and for the benefit of those they lead. As Lord Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad-Gita 3:21, quote, "Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. Whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues." Because everyone follows their example, the leaders are required to carefully study the process of devotional service to Lord Vishnu. This is their duty. Thus, for the benefit of human society, there is a great need to construct universities that will impart knowledge of devotional service. About a page left. Alas, the times are such that those who are considered leaders and stalwarts of society are more viciously inimical to God than others. Therefore, what devotional service for Lord Vishnu's satisfaction can they perform? And if they cannot perform devotional service, then how will they gain release from their innumerable sins? If the stalwarts of society are not willing to declare that Lord Vishnu is the omnipresent absolute truth, and that he is all-pervasive due to his being both a person as well as formless, then what can the lesser man, the man on the street, understand about this esoteric subject matter? The Supreme Lord is the sole proprietor of everything. We cannot take the position of the enjoyer and proprietor of this material world. Whatever the Supreme Lord mercifully gives us as his remnants, that alone should be accepted. We must never desire another's property, as the Ishopanishad states, quote, everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong, unquote. Only when the leaders of society center all their activities on the Supreme Lord Vishnu will these activities bring good fortune and benediction to the leaders themselves, as well as to their followers. But if the leaders avoid performing their activities for Lord Vishnu and instead pose as Lord Vishnu themselves, taking worship, wealth, and praise from their followers and returning the same to them as remnants, then others might become attracted by their pretentious renunciation and thus follow their path to doom. But nothing further will be achieved. Such leaders uselessly excite their ignorant sycophants, inducing them to perform many sinful activities. In this way, such selfish leaders bring about their followers' doom simply to increase their own distinction, adoration, and wealth. Unfortunately, the leaders do not know that these minuscule portions of distinction, adoration, and wealth will be burned to ashes with their death. But the sinful methods used to acquire these temporary material advantages will beget results, which will then subtly mix with their subtle body, namely mind, intelligence, and false ego. And these results will later become the seeds of their further sinful activities, which will entangle the soul in the cycle of karmic reactions of birth and death, forcing them to go through many different species of life. So this is all one essay, but there's many different sections. And each essay is very long. And I'm going to stop there because I've done about a reading long. The next section is called How to Cure the Material Disease. This is, again, a book called Renunciation Through Wisdom. It's a book elaborating and explaining the teachings, the ancient teachings of India, how to end the suffering of everybody and end the chaotic condition in the material world, individually and collectively, how we can all become peaceful and happy. So it's quite a wonderful book. We've read for about an hour if you're just tuning in. You can go watch my replay later. This will also be posted on YouTube, Sadhu-sanga Das. You can find me on YouTube. You can follow and you get notifications when we're going to read if you want to read. Thank you for tuning in. And it's not my knowledge, by the way. It's just Bhakti-vedanta Swami. That's his knowledge. But we'll continue reading, so please tune in, and I'll close down the broadcast now. So thank you very much. So if anybody from the YouTube broadcast wants to join me over at Discord, I'll send you a link and you can join us there. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time when we just read part 2. I guess we'll just read through it. Prabhupada preaching from 1949, back in the day when he was part of the Gaudia-Matha. You get that Gaudia-Matha feel. Bhaktisiddhanta's preaching is very strong, very much like a doctor preaching. Very fascinating stuff. So let me get this link. Post the link here. I know there's only a few people here, but you can come and join and share it with your friends. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.